It's 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Christopher Kavanau, and this is an introductory human biology class for non-majors. So this may be the first science class you've ever had in college, and the whole class is geared that way. So it's geared to be sort of a toned-down version of a hardcore science class that you might take if you were a major. So what I like to do is I like to get the syllabus handed out so we can go over the syllabus. And I'm also going to pass around a sign-in sheet as well. So I'm going to get that sign-in sheet going around. So kind of work it across the aisles and down back. And then the last person to sign it, just please bring it back up to me. So I'll get the syllabi handed out. There we go. There we go. Nope. There you go. 1, 2, 3. There you go. It's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go. 1, 2, 3. Go. 3. There you go. Oh, one more for you. There you go. Go. One for you. Okay. Did everybody get a syllabus? Okay. So just pass this down to the gentleman at the end. So everybody got a syllabus? Okay, great. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over the syllabus. Okay, it's to give you an outline of the class, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then finally we're going to jump into today's lecture, which will be on the scientific method. Okay, and that'll be pretty much what we're doing today. So the class will run until about 50 minutes past the hour. Just as a note, if you ever come in late, okay, just come right on in. Okay, the doors will be kept unlocked, so you'll have no trouble accessing the entrance. Okay. All right, so this is Biology 12, which is an introductory human biology class. And my name is Dr. Christopher Kavanau. The lecture will always be held in this room. Okay, there's really two components to this course, a lecture and a lab. So the lecture will always be held here, okay, 2 days a week. And then the lab will depend on what section you're in, okay? You need to make sure you're enrolled in both the lecture and the lab, very important. And it's very important you attend both every week. If you need to reach me, there's 2 ways of getting in contact with me. One way is by email, okay? And my email address is posted here. It's Kavanau@kutztown.edu. And that's the best way to get me. But if you need to reach me for anything that's time sensitive, anything that's time critical, then the best way is to just shoot me a text or to call me. Texting would be best, because that way I have written documentation of the correspondence. Okay? So for example, if you emailed me and you're not getting a reply back fast enough, or if you need to get information to me right away, then I would just shoot me a text. But if it's just regular, non-time critical correspondence, then please just send me an email. That's the best way. Okay. You'll note that the syllabus indicates that I reserve the right to change the syllabus at any time. The reason for that is primarily because during this semester we often have snow days and classes get canceled, and it completely mucks up the schedule, so we have to redo the schedule, meet at different times, switch chapters around, sometimes in the most extreme cases. So that's why I reserve the right to change the syllabus. Now, if I do change the syllabus, if we do have a snow day, okay, it's important that you check your email in case I send any information to the class as a whole. You can get access to that information in a timely way. Okay? So you definitely want to check your email on a regular basis for any type of correspondence from me in regards to the class. Also, there's a weather hotline for Kutztown University that you can call, or you can go to the website to determine if classes are being canceled. So you might check shortly before you normally leave for class to see if classes have been canceled if it looks like the weather is pretty bad. Okay? So you don't want to obviously come to school in dangerous weather when you didn't have to. Okay. Now here, on the next page, we talk about the textbook. Okay? You definitely want to get the textbook. It's Human Biology, 10th edition, by C.C. Starr and Beverly McMillan. Okay? The book is around $100. Okay? You will also get access to MindTap, which is an online system by which you can do, there's supplementary materials like flashcards, and there are quizzes that you'll need to take through MindTap. And so you definitely want to get access to this information sooner rather than later. So I would try to get the textbook for the class this week if you can. Now, just so you know, the textbook is loaded with information. Okay? The exam material that I'm going to be supplying to you guys on test day, okay, what you need to know for the exams is what we cover in class. Okay? So if we didn't cover it in the lecture, if it wasn't in the PowerPoint presentation, if it wasn't something that I said, then it's most likely not going to be on the test. Okay? The book is a service to help reinforce the material that we cover in class. Okay? So I just want to tell you that because there are a lot of chapters in the, as you'll notice when we get to the course schedule, there are a lot of chapters covered, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed with the amount of reading, because the key thing here is just to attend the lectures, take notes, and to observe the PowerPoint presentations. So you're going to be basically getting the information off the PowerPoints. I will be supplying the PowerPoints online on D2L. So you can actually print out the PowerPoint presentations before coming to class, and you can take notes directly on the PowerPoint slides. That's the way I would do it. That's probably the best way of doing it. That way you don't have to copy all the material that's in the PowerPoint slides. I will provide it to you. And also, you want to go by your notes. That is the things that come out of my mouth, the things that I say. That information from the PowerPoints and the things that I tell you during lecture, that will form the basis of the exam material. Okay? So it's not like I'm going to make you responsible for everything in the book, because it's just an overwhelming amount of material. Okay? So, but you do want to read the book because it'll reinforce the concepts you cover in class. It'll make things understandable. So if there's something that wasn't entirely clear that I covered during lecture it'll make a lot more sense once you read it from the book. The author is fantastic, the pair of authors are great, and it's a very well-written text. So it'll definitely help you. So I would definitely get that book this week so you can start reading it, but it's not absolutely essential you get it this week. Okay, if it's next week, that'll be okay too, but you definitely want to get it within the first 2 weeks. And again, you want to focus on what's covered in class. The only way you can focus on what's covered in class is if you come to class, okay? So that's very important, that you don't miss lectures. If you do miss lecture, okay, for whatever reason, okay, you want to make sure that you have the phone number of a buddy in the class where you can exchange notes. So what I would do is before leaving today, just grab the person sitting next to you and maybe swap phone numbers so that way you can get information in case one of you misses class. You can then exchange notes. There's also a lab manual that you'll want to get. Okay, it's a Bio 12 lab manual. It's a gray manual, and you'll need that for lab. Now, this week, if you don't get the manual, it's not the end of the world, because we will be providing copies of the first lab to you, okay? But they will not be available after this week. So after this week, you have to have the lab manual, otherwise you won't be able to do the labs. So you want to just try to get everything this week, especially the lab manual. You can't do without that. You also want to make sure that you sign on to D2L, because it's on D2L you're going to get your grades. That's where grades will be posted. Okay? That's where I'll provide supplementary material. The syllabus is up there, so you have an electronic copy of it. And if the syllabus gets revised due to any inclement weather or any other factors that might change the course schedule around, then you have to get that from D2L. So learn how to sign on to D2L. Another important thing about signing on to D2L is that supposing you turn something in and there's some fluke event where it doesn't show up on D2L, then you can notify me and let me know, hey, this assignment didn't get posted on D2L, okay? Haven't had any situations like that happening, but it's always good to double check. Okay. Attendance is very critical for this class because one, the material for the exams will come from material that we cover in the class. If you don't attend class, then you're going to be facing the daunting prospect of like reading the entire book to get the material. If you attend class, then I can narrow down that information to a very manageable bite-sized amount. So you don't have to like read the entire chapter and memorize everything. Okay? So attending class is going to make your life easier. So you need to attend, but you also need to attend because we're going to be having in-class assignments. Okay? And I'll explain a little bit more on that coming up in a second. Class preparation, you want to put in at least 2 hours of independent study for each hour of class that we meet. Now everybody's different on this. Some people are going to require more than 2 hours, some people less, depending on how good your short and long-term memories are. But you want to start off with around 2 hours of independent study per class as a way of making sure that you keep up with the material. And it's important that you don't fall behind, because once you fall behind, this is the classical mistake that students make, is falling behind, and then it's then a downward spiral from there. Okay? You fall further and further behind, then when you show up to class, things don't make sense because you're already behind, and it just gets worse and worse. The best thing to do is just to keep up with the material. Okay? And the best way to do that is by attending class. There's also a section here on the bottom of the second page on disability accommodations. If you have a disability and you have documentation demonstrating it, then if you go to the Office of Disability Services, which is at 215 Stratton Administration Building, you can show them this documentation, and if it meets their qualifications, you can then get accommodation papers which you can then provide to me, and then this will allow you to get special accommodations for any disability you might have. If you have such accommodation papers, I suggest bringing it to me either after class or during my office hours. This is the best way to do it. Okay, now we'll talk about the in-class assignments. I call these the daily review participation problem solving activities. The way it works is at the beginning of the semester, I give you all the points for those assignments. So I give you 100 points. But if you miss an assignment because you're not here, you lose 5 points. So really, this is a participation grade. Okay? So you're participating by doing the problems, by thinking about the problems, working out the answers. And if you just are here to do the problems, you'll get credit. You'll only lose points if you're not here. So I can't stress the importance of showing up to class, because really it's been demonstrated that there's a strong correlation between attending class and doing well in the class. There's a famous quote by Woody Allen that states that 80% of success is showing up. Okay? If you don't show up to the set as an actor, you're probably not going to succeed very well. Okay? So really, you just need to show up, to be here, to take notes, to get the information, and that's really the first major step. If you start not attending, you're going to fall behind. We'll also have 2 critical thinking assignments. I'm going to talk more about these next week. I'm going to hand out a sheet that will explain it all. And basically what it involves is I'm going to give you a list of videos that you can watch on YouTube. So you're going to watch 2 videos on YouTube. And then you're going to answer some questions from that video on a sheet of paper. Okay? So it's going to be 2 typewritten pages. One page is going to deal with one of the videos that you watched, and the other page, the second page, will deal with the other video. One of the videos will be mandatory that you'll all have to watch. That's a really fantastic video that covers the importance of critical thinking and applying critical thinking to your lives. So it's something that you can really take home with you and that will really benefit your lives. And the second video will be one that you choose from a pool. So it'll be your selection. You can pick anything you want. Okay. These will be short videos, anywhere from like 20 minutes to an hour long. And you'll just answer questions, applying what you've learned in class to your answer. And I'm not going to be grading you on any particular opinion you might have in reference to the question that I ask, but really I'm going to be looking at your ability to apply what you've learned in class and your ability to think critically about the problem. So more on that next week. I'll hand out those assignments, and I'll also post those assignments as well as detailed instructions on D2L. So again, important for you to learn how to log on to D2L to check these assignments and to check your grades and so on. Okay, as far as evaluation, formal evaluation, there's going to be a total of 4 exams. Okay, 3 just regular exams, and the last exam will be cumulative, a final exam. You need to make sure that you show up to class to take these exams, obviously. If you're going to miss an exam because you're horribly ill, okay, you're projectile vomiting, you're very sick, can't make it to class, totally understandable, okay, then you need to notify me no later than the day of the exam. I've had situations where one student last semester informed me that they missed an exam 3 weeks later and wanted to take a makeup. That's not acceptable, okay? Let me know, because by then the tests have been, you get the answers and are in public domain, and I can't give you the test. So you need to let me know no later than the day of the exam so that I can make arrangements with you to take a makeup. Now there are certain qualifications for being able to miss a test and take a makeup. One, okay, maybe you're very sick, you can provide a doctor's note, or maybe it's some religious holiday, or you need to attend school band practice, or there's a death in the family. These sorts of things are okay, but you need to provide written documentation verifiable documentation, and you need to let me know you're missing the test no later than the day of the exam so I can schedule a makeup. That's critical. If you don't let me know later, if you let me know past the day of the exam, then I can't really work with you on scheduling a makeup. Okay. Okay, as far as the breakdown of the grade, there will be 3 lecture exams, regular lecture exams, worth 15% for each exam. So that'll be a total of 45% for the regular exams. There will also be a final exam worth 20%, and then there will be the online MindTap quizzes, which will be worth 20%. Okay. Also, the daily review participation problem-solving activities, that's 10%. And again, I'm giving you those 100 points from the beginning. The only way you're going to lose points is by not attending. Okay? And the way these will work typically is I'll have 3x5 cards provided at the back of the room on the table. You grab a 3x5 card, I'll put a question up on the screen, and you just answer the question. Might be a question that just would be, say, some information that was from the last lecture. And I'm not going to ask anything hard, just the kind of question that you can answer if you were just here paying attention. Okay. You'll answer the question, and that'll basically be your participation score. Okay? Now, whether you answer the question right or wrong, you'll still get the points. I just want you to think about the problem and to show that you're here working on the problems. I use a standard grading format, which is posted here. Late assignments. If you have any assignment that's late, in other words, you give it to me past the designated due date, then you lose 10% for each class day, for each calendar day, I should say, that it's late. Okay? So the next time you can turn a late assignment to me would be the next time we meet. And for each day you miss, it's 10% loss. The reason why teachers penalize for late assignments is because we're trying to prevent you from falling behind, okay? Because there's a natural tendency to fall behind. There are so many other things we'd rather be doing than studying for a particular class. I mean, we're all like this. I was this way when I was a student. Some classes I just didn't care for. And if you fall behind, it just starts to spiral down further and further and further. You get further behind, and then it's just an unpleasant experience, okay? This is an introductory class, so it's not really a super hard class by any means. It's a relatively easy class. All you have to do is just keep up with the material. Show up to class and keep up with the reading as possible. And again, the reading is just to reinforce the material you're learning in the class, but the meat and potatoes is the material covered in the class directly. Classroom conduct. Most importantly, no talking while I'm talking, because that's disruptive to the people around you. And you just no talking while I'm talking. And please, no use of electronic devices while I'm lecturing. So don't use your cell phone, no texting. Please don't use your computers at all, because it's disruptive to the people behind you. Studies have shown, I was just reading one the other day, where they conducted a study where they had students using computers in class, and they showed that performance dropped because there's a tendency for the student using the computer and those behind the student using the computer to focus more on whatever the person's looking at, playing video games or whatever, rather than the lecture itself. Okay, so it's disruptive to other people around you, and it's not really going to help you. Okay. So I would just print out the PowerPoint presentations. That way you can write directly on them. Now, some students have a disability. If you have a disability where you can only take notes by typing into a computer, then that's understandable. Then that's okay. But I don't want to look back here and see a third of the class using computers, okay? It should just be just a couple. For those students that absolutely need it to take notes, because maybe they type really fast and they can take notes that way. Okay? If you are that kind of student, maybe sit further in the back so you don't disrupt other students. Okay. Here is the class schedule. Okay, this is very important. If you're not sure what we're covering, and any given meeting time, please consult the schedule. I have students texting me asking me, what are we covering today? Okay, seriously, I get these kinds of questions all the time. Just check the syllabus, it's right here. Okay. If the syllabus changes because of a snow day or whatever reason, I will give you an updated course schedule, and that'll be posted on D2L. Okay. You want to pay particular attention to the exam days. Okay, we've got exam days here on February 12th, March 17th, April 9th, and then the final exam. Okay. So don't wait until the weekend before the exam to start studying. That's not good news, okay? You want to make sure that you start studying now. Start getting ready for the test now, not the weekend before the exam. There's no way you can do well trying to cram in a lot of material into your brain the weekend before an exam, okay? Unless you have a photographic memory, and some of you might. I've had students that had photographic memories, and they just study for the exam a few days before the test, and they do great. And they get the highest in the class. Okay? Most people are not like that. I'm not like that. So you need to make sure you just start studying now. Start getting ready now for the first test. Also here posted is the Friday, April 3rd deadline to receive a W for the class. Now, this school is cool because they give you the deadline to withdraw from the class pretty much towards the end of the semester. A lot of schools have this deadline towards the beginning of the semester. Okay, so this school is a really nice school. UCLA is like this too. They have the withdrawal deadline towards the end of the semester. So that way you get a chance to evaluate the class to see how well you're doing, and if necessary, withdraw towards the end. Okay? But you really don't want to get too many W's on your record. I used to serve on the admissions committee for the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and when we evaluated students for admission as candidates, if we saw too many W's, it really raised a red flag that something was wrong. So generally, you know, if you get like 1 or 2 W's for your stay in college, it's expected and understandable. Okay, things happen. You withdraw from a class. An interviewer might want some kind of explanation. But if they see like 3, 4, 5 W's, they see a pattern, they're going to think something is weird. And so like if you're applying to medical school, for example, they don't want to invest like a lot of money in a student that's like not serious. And so you really don't want too many W's. So that's why, again, don't fall behind in the class. Okay, we talked about that. The rest of this is pretty much boilerplate, something you would expect, information you'd expect to see on any syllabus. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the syllabus. Any questions? Okay, no questions. If you think of any questions, just ask me next time or after class. Okay, so we're going to jump into the lecture part for the remaining half of the class. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. This person might be your alter ego, by the way. This is a really funny picture that I found online of a mad scientist. And a lot of you, because you're taking a course for non-majors, you're probably not majoring in science. But you might find that after you take this class, that you've changed your mind and you might become a science major. I see this all the time. So this might become your alter ego, some mad scientist wanting to make fantastic discoveries and improve the world. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. Ever since I was very young, I've been interested in science and how things work. It's a picture of me at 3 years old taking apart and building some circuits. Here I'm building a relay circuit. Not sure where I got the parts from to do it, probably taking apart TV and other things that I found around the house. My parents used to get very upset at me for taking things apart. I remember on an outing with my grandmother, I took apart the radio, her radio that we used on the outing, and she was very upset. I tried to get it back together, but it had a little string carriage for moving the dial across, and I couldn't get it together, and she blew a fuse. And I used to take our TVs apart and just trying to understand how they work. So I've been very interested in science for a very long time. And so in my pre-college years, I got a job working for Gene Morgan Financial as a stockbroker and as a technical analyst for the TV show KY, which is at the time, Charting the Market, which was the name of the show, was the longest running financial news show running continuously. It had been running continuously for 27 years when I had joined. And so my job was really to analyze market trends and to report them after the market closed. And so I was very much interested in the technical aspects of investing in the stock market. But after a while, I got saturated on all this, and I decided to go back to college. And while I was in college, I started to develop interests in oil painting. And this comes from just a deep-rooted interest that I have in color. So this is an oil painting I did of my mentor at UCLA. Just to give you an example. I paint using very thick applications of oil paint. And this painting here is 5 by 5 feet, so it's a very large canvas. And this is another painting I did of Central Park. So you can see the reflection of the trees in the water. And then another of the Charles River overlooking Cambridge when I was giving presentations at Harvard. And this is a painting I did the backyard of my mom's house titled A Family of Trees, and you can see probably some Van Gogh influence in the way I did the trees. So I was doing art in college, interested in color, but I also became very interested in how the brain works, in particular how color is represented in the brain. So I did some early experiments where I designed and built an artificial neural network that basically mimics the way the brain works. And so you can see all these wires are basically implementing electronic circuits, computer circuits. And I trained this artificial neural network to be able to recognize human faces. So I would present a face to it from different angles, and I would train the computer, in this case this artificial brain as it were, train it to recognize a particular face. Then I would present that face, but using novel positions, perhaps with visual occlusions like a disguise or a bar placed in front of the face, to test to see if it could still recognize the face, and it does spectacularly well under those conditions. So I trained it to recognize faces, and then I used this technology. This is really kind of like pattern recognition, teaching a computer, sort of emulating the way the brain works to recognize patterns, in this case the patterns that we find in faces. So I used this technology for my Ph.D. thesis at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine to discover how color is represented in the brain. So what I would do is I'd take a test subject, I would perform neurosurgery to expose the part of the brain where visual information is encoded. They call it the visual cortex. The test subject would look at a particular color, and then I would look at brain activity. The dark areas here correspond to areas where you have brain activity. And then by analyzing that brain activity, I could tell you what color the animal was looking at. Okay. So basically, I discovered how color is represented in the brain, and I found that color is represented in a circular way, in the same way that we perceive color. We perceive color in a circular way, like a painter's wheel that we're all familiar with. Okay. In the physical world, color is not circular, it's actually straight. Okay? We all know how light can be split up using a prism, as Newton found, can be split up into the rainbow, which is a line that goes from one end of the rainbow to the other. But we perceive color in a circular way because blue and red are connected by purple. And so I found that in the brain, color is represented in a circular way in the same way that we perceive it, which is what we would expect. We would expect that our perceptions would match on somehow to how information is processed in the brain. Also, using artificial neural networks, these artificial brains, I found a way to process images taken by an electron microscope, which is represented here. These images are very tiny objects found in your body, in the cells of your body. And so those are represented up here, these 6, as just samples of these images taken by the electron microscope. Then using my technology, I'm able to form 3-dimensional pictures at very high resolution from these 2-dimensional images. And I obtained a United States patent on this technology and obtained a second patent on it last year, which is finalizing now. Okay, so enough about myself. I'd like now to jump into the lecture. If you have any questions as we go, please feel free to ask. So some of the questions we're going to be tackling today is, what is science? Why is science important? How do we arrive at scientific knowledge? And then we're going to start talking about biology specifically. What is life? And what are the reductionist levels for understanding biology? And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Okay. So we're not going to be able to get through all of this today. You'll notice on the syllabus we're continuing our discussion of the scientific method the next time we meet. Okay. So, which will be Thursday. So we're going to get through as far as we can today, and then we're going to finish up next time we meet. So you picked a good introductory course. Okay? Biology courses are nice for introductory science classes because it isn't just biology that we talk about. We talk about chemistry and physics as well to a small extent. And so really you get a good overview of kind of information that you can find in science in a biology class. And what's great about a human biology class is it relates to you directly because we're all humans. And so it's a little bit more tangible than a general biology class where you're talking about non-human creatures. So a lot of people think of science as just a collection of facts, okay? And to a certain extent, that is what science is. It is a collection of facts, but it's much more than that. It's a process. It's a process by which we arrive at knowledge. And so we're going to talk about this process, and this process is called the scientific method. And it's very important for you to really make this the big take-home message for the course, is to understand what the scientific method is. Now, when you take a philosophy class, there's a branch of philosophy known as epistemology. So it's something you would touch upon if you took an introductory philosophy class. Epistemology is the study of how you arrive at knowledge. How do you get your knowledge? Do you get your knowledge by just asking someone and believing them just on blind faith? Or do you try to back up the information using evidence? Okay, there are different systems, and one of the systems that's by far really the most successful system that we've encountered ever in the human race is the scientific method. It's allowed just a transformation in our lives, the creation of cell phones and computers and refrigerators, things that we take for granted today, which are all dependent upon the scientific method. So science is exciting, okay, because if you become a scientist, you're really on the cutting edge of knowledge. Because it's not like you can just learn all of science. It's not possible. We're really just at an infancy level right now on our understanding of the world through a scientific perspective. So you're really at the cutting edge of knowledge. So that makes it very exciting. Science is also very useful because all of these conveniences, which you can see presented up here, that we take for granted would not be possible if it weren't for science. The invention of computers, of cell phones, of video games would not have been possible if we hadn't invented the transistor. And the transistor was developed through advances in physics. It's through advances in physics that the transistor, the principles by which the transistor worked, were developed and advanced, and then scientists were able to then develop the first transistor in 1947. So then it made possible all of these technological conveniences, all the electronic gadgets we take for granted. Things like air conditioners wouldn't be possible if it weren't for advances in science. Just imagine life without an air conditioner. Automobiles, prosthetics, all these things which make our lives better. Also advances in medical science as well. And advances in the medical sciences have led to an increase of lifespan. Right around here, okay, around the 1700s, the 18th century, when science was beginning to flourish, you can see that the medical sciences resulted in a skyrocketing effect of the lifespan, average lifespan of human beings. Okay. During the Middle Ages and during Roman times, the average lifespan was around 30 years old. So saying today, you know, if a person lives to like 80 or 85 years old, that would have been like someone during the Middle Ages saying that they lived to 30. If you live to 30, wow, you're pretty old. Okay, you know, it's amazing you got that far. Now, it's not to say that people didn't live much older, but most people didn't. Okay, most people would die due to infection or other types of diseases, which now have been solved by way, or solved to a great extent, by way of the medical sciences. And all of this is possible because of the scientific method. Science is also an ongoing process. It doesn't just stop. It keeps going. Our knowledge of science is refining. Science is not the arrogant proposition that we have reached a total and complete understanding of nature and we can never learn anything further. We're always refining our knowledge. We're always like developing new ideas and refining our ideas. So science is an ongoing process. And science is also a global human endeavor. If you make some discovery here in the United States, then that discovery doesn't mean much if researchers in some other area of the world can't verify what you found, if they can't produce the same results that you discovered. So this gives credibility to your discovery if the discovery is reproducible, if other researchers can get the same answer. And also science allows you to think critically about the world around you. Okay? You can't be hoodwinked by some commercial telling you that French fries are good for you, because you can do your own independent thinking based upon scientific knowledge that's available online to come to your own independent conclusions as to whether or not a particular food like French fries are good for you. So how do we arrive at scientific knowledge? Again, I mentioned it's by way of the scientific method. The scientific method is a process, okay? It's a process that leads you to closer truth, leads you towards truth, but you don't actually reach truth. So let me illustrate the scientific method by way of some card tricks, okay? Imagine you're at a family reunion, okay, and Uncle Harry, as is represented in the upper left-hand corner, is doing card tricks. And kids are watching, and the kids are really impressed, and they say, Uncle Harry, can you just tell us how you did the card trick? And Uncle Harry keeps saying, it's magic, kids, wink, wink, not really telling the kids anything other than just kind of just hoodwinking them into thinking that it's just Harry Potter magic. But the kids are smarter than that. They know that there is something naturalistic going on. They want a naturalistic explanation as to how Uncle Harry is doing the trick. So how might a particularly clever kid figure out how Uncle Harry did the trick? Okay, so here is a flow chart for doing that. And this flow chart, you'll see in a minute, is basically common sense, but it's the meat and potatoes of the scientific method. Okay, the first thing you do is you ask a question, how did he do that? Okay, in other words, how did Uncle Harry do the trick? So you ask a question. The next step is you look up card tricks on the internet. So basically you're doing your homework. Why try to reinvent the wheel if the card trick is already published online? Okay, just go online and try to find it. Maybe you can't find the exact card trick, but you might find something that's close. Or you might get clues as to how the card trick was done through your research online. Or you might talk to a friend who works at the Magic Castle and get some insight from him or her. The next step is to make an educated guess. It's an educated guess because you did your homework. okay? Not a non-educated guess if you didn't do any background research or homework. So you make an educated guess based upon the information you glean online as to how the card trick was done. Then the next step is to try it out. Get some friends maybe that were at the party that watched Uncle Harry do the trick, and try out the card trick on your friends to get some feedback from them as to whether or not you're spot on or whether you're not even close or maybe a little bit close. Okay? So you try out the card trick on some friends, you get the results, that's the feedback, in other words, what happened. You get those results back, and then from those results you can then draw a conclusion. The conclusion is either the hypothesis or the educated guess is correct, or the conclusion is the educated guess was not correct. Okay? If the educated guess was right, in other words, the feedback you get from your peers who are watching the card trick, and they tell you it's exactly the way Uncle Harry did it, looks exactly the same, then you can go home and declare yourself victorious. Okay? And go tell your friends how great a job you did. If your guess is not right, then you need to go back and think again. You need to modify your educated guess, tweak it. Okay? Do the card trick a little bit differently. Okay? Try to fix any errors that were in the card trick that made that card trick deviate from the way Uncle Harry did the trick. Okay? And then you make that new educated guess. Then you try it out, try the card trick out on some friends. Then you get the results. In other words, what happened? You know, did the card trick match on perfectly to the way Uncle Harry did it, or wasn't even close? Draw your conclusion, which is either your guess was right or your guess was wrong. If your guess was wrong, go back and think again. Modify your educated guess to form a new educated guess, and keep cycling through this over and over and over again until your guess gets stronger and stronger and stronger and closer to the way Uncle Harry actually did the trick. And this is the way magicians actually figure out how other magicians do tricks. If you see the Prestige, the movie The Prestige, you'll see some really kind of fun examples of magicians trying to figure out how other magicians are doing tricks. And this is how auto mechanics figure out what's wrong with your car. Okay, they make an educated guess as to what's wrong with your car. Okay, and if they guess wrong, then they need to go and think again, and they modify their educated guess over and over and over again until they get closer and closer to the way, into the problem with your car and figure it out. Now in science, we have jargon because scientists always like to make things harder sometimes than they have to be. We have a special word for the educated guess, and that's called the hypothesis. So the hypothesis is the educated guess. Everything else is pretty much the same. You know, trying out the card trick on some friends, that's conducting an experiment, testing with an experiment. And then analyze the results, draw the conclusion is the same. And if your guess was right, then it means your hypothesis is true. If your guess was wrong, then your hypothesis was false. And you always want to make sure that you report your results in the end so that your great discovery isn't just held to yourself. Okay, one of the things about science is that other scientists need to benefit from your discoveries so that it can be a growing endeavor and not a stagnant endeavor. Okay, so the most important thing here is just the word hypothesis. That's the educated guess. So let me give you another example really fast here. Supposing you drive your car and it breaks down, or you pull into a parking lot and the car doesn't start. Okay? So you ask the question, why doesn't my car start? So you do your background research. You call your mechanic. You pull out your cell phone, you go online to Google, and you type in, what could be wrong with my car, and list the symptoms. You construct a hypothesis. That's your educated guess. So your educated guess might be, for example, if I put gas in my car and I turn the ignition, the car will start. Okay, that would be your educated guess. So you can try that out with an experiment. Okay, the experiment would be to put gas in your car and turn the ignition. If the car starts, then that's the result. The car started. If the car does not start, then that's the result. Your car did not start. And then your conclusion would be either your guess was right or your guess was wrong. In other words, your hypothesis was right or your hypothesis was wrong. If your hypothesis is right, you're done. You report your results by calling your mechanic, telling your friends, whatever. If your guess was wrong, in other words, if your hypothesis is wrong, you need to go back and think again. Okay? So maybe the problem is with say your battery. Maybe you have loose battery terminals. So you could form a new hypothesis. The new hypothesis will be, if I tighten the battery terminals and turn the ignition, the car will start. You can test that out with an experiment by getting a wrench, tightening the battery terminals, turning the ignition. If the car starts, that's your result. If the car doesn't start, that's also your result. So if the car starts, you're done. Okay? It means your hypothesis is true, that is, your educated guess is true. You report your results, and you're done. This is the scientific method. Now, you may think, oh, this is common sense. I do this all the time. And that's because we live in an era where we think more or less rationally, or we try to think rationally. Whereas during the Middle Ages, this was radical stuff. Okay? People were thrown in dungeons for espousing this kind of way of thinking for acquiring knowledge. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to wrap up our discussion of the scientific method on Thursday, and then we'll talk about the next chapter from there. Okay, so make sure you get the book, and be sure you get the lab book as well for the labs this week.